right, good morning once again. Of course, you're still listening to Lagoon Radio, your number one online gospel radio station, powered by the Diocese of Lagos, Anglican Communion. It's a beautiful Monday, the 27th day in the month of September 2021. And of course, it's 9:39 a.m. here from our studio. You can like and follow us on Facebook at Lagoon Radio Nigeria, on Instagram at Lagoonradio.Ng, and of course on Twitter is at Lagoonradio.Ng. It's about time for the newspaper review. My name is Taiwo Adiola Shabiligbe, and right with me in the studio is Favor Onsachi. I also have Okpeyemi Osakwe, and of course I have Sammy here in the studio. We'll be doing the talking together. Of course, we have so many papers that we'll try as much as possible to cover everything. And in no particular order, we started with the new Telegraph newspaper. LDR bank's credit to economy surged 6.54 trillion naira in 2 years. And the right on that it says only one bank has met minimum 65.0%. The story is on the front page and you can continue reading on page 3 of the new Telegraph. Securities lending at Naira it's 95.2 million naira. The story is right on page 23. Ship owners hopes dashed as Buhari cancels cabotage fund disbursement. Page 6 of the new Telegraph. Why PDP's National Zoning Committee meeting ended in deadlock. Source. Page 6 of the paper. Restructuring will benefit Nigeria, says the Southwest Monarchs. Page 7 of the new Telegraph, the story is right there. Why shunned APGA's campaign flag off by Bianca Ojukwu. Obioma others disrespecting Ikemba's memory. Page 2 of the paper, there you find the story. And at the very front page, nationwide military presence. Police are failed in internal security, retired general. And the right down there it says, and no, they are overwhelmed, says ex-DSS chief. Please keep mum. Bandits release 10 Bethel Baptist students. Kill 15 in Sokoto joint military base. Nigeria security architecture has failed under Buhari, says Autumn. All the stories you find on pages 2, pages 8, and pages 28 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Still on the paper, APC convention. Former NWC members Izunaso Giadom. Sorry about that. Mustafa plot return. And right under it says, I'll cement every crack in party, says Sheriff. Page 3 of the New Telegraph paper, the story is right there. And FBI arrests 35 Nigerians over alleged $117 million romance scam. Page 2 of the paper, the story is right there. And that's all I'll be taking on the New Telegraph paper.
Here on the Daily Times newspaper, at the very top of the page, says Nigeria will overcome its security and economic challenges, says Osibanjo and Adeboye. You can read more on the story on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. At the very middle of the page, Minority Reps Caucus flays claims in Buhari's speech, and the writer under that says speech didn't reflect Nigeria's true position and insurgents have become emboldened under president's watch. You can read more on that story as you get into on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. 10 more kidnapped Bethel Baptist students gain freedom. We're happy about that, and you can read more on the story on page 2. We have adequate structures to successfully e-transmit election results, INEC insists. You can read more on that story on page 14. And CBN supports power gas infrastructure with 424.14 billion naira. You can read more on that story on page 17. And at the very bottom of the page, FIRS has statutory powers to collect VAT, says Madwa Buchi. And you can read more on that story on page 3. And that is all I have on the Daily Times newspaper.
Thank you very much. Sammy wants to help us with the paper.
Moving to Nigeria, Tumbling. That's on top. There's location of radio Biafra discovered in southeast London. Wow, Oyo Oshun.
Okay, I guess it's quite tiny from your end, right? Okay, I'll be taking that here. Well, Nigerian Tribune, location of Radio Biafra discovered in southeast London. The story is right on page 6 of Pages 5 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Why Oyo Osun Zone should not produce PDP national chairman, says Bode George. Page 23, you find the story there. Hush Puppy. US government gathers 2,700 electronic files, 6,700 page documentary evidence against Abba Kyari.
That's fantastic.
Well, we've talked about this before. The lawyer has a work to do, and I'm sure the person that actually sent this has got a lot on his shoulders too. And it takes a lot of hard work and patience, and together
Really
this
thorough.
much.
They're very thorough in what they do.
And it's a serious case. You just have to take your time to execute it and to get the facts. Okay, 330,000 Nigerians now refugees in Chad, Cameroon, Niger Republic, federal government. Page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune. Equity investors earn 10 billion naira in 5 days. Stories right on page 7. Access Bank to issue addition 5-year tier 1 euro bond. Page 20 of the Nigerian Tribune. The stories right there. Capital markets can bridge infrastructure gap. Secretary. The story is on page 7. And on the very front page, Independence, 61 years after Nigerians poorer than ever before. I can't believe we're going to be like 61 years in a few days. Maybe three or 4 days. How do you think about the situation of the country?
Wow. We are 61 by age, but I believe really we are still crawling.
Still like crawling. 1 year old or 6 month old.
Younger than crown, I guess.
Excuse me, what's that supposed to mean? Favor, I'll lash you. Well, the right under it says a poverty rate moved from 15% in 1960 to 50% in 2021. Nigeria may never solve infrastructure deficit. Emefiele. Rising poverty, cause of insecurity. Finance Minister. All this you find on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. And right beside it, at the very middle, robbery scare. Police flay banks over closure in Ijebu. Page 27 also of the paper. Non-implementation of agreement. ASU to meet federal government next week. Page 25. Arbitration panel orders Intels to pay 624 sacked dock workers full entitlement. Page 25 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. And at the bottom of that, we have Nigeria at 61. Osinbajo, Sanwo-Olu, Makinde, Uzodinma, Lalong call for prayers. And right under it says, country suffering from leadership failure, says Wike. Adeboye declares peace, says all will be well. We can only but pray.
Right.
We can only but pray. And I still pray may God help us. Because bad leadership
just like
equals to
said.
bad country. The story is right on page 2. It's an interesting one. You might want to take a glance at it. And that'll be all on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Favor,
with me, I have This Day newspaper. It says, Lawan, Buhari has done more to diversify economy than past leaders. The writer under that says, but for agric intervention, Nigeria will still be net food importer. Well, you can read more on that story on page, something that looks like 17 of the This Day newspaper. Fire me, all governors have resolved to dump open grazing. You can read more on that story on page 6. Ahead of October's launch, eNaira platform goes live. The rider under that says records 1 million hits in days after unveiling according to analytics. You can read more on that story on page 20. Sorry, I cannot see that number.
It's quite tiny.
Very tiny.
Yes.
Bandits free another batch of 10 Bethel Baptist students, 11 still in captivity. The rider under that says Indume condemns killing of soldiers by insurgents in Borno. And you can read more on that story on yet another very tiny page. You will forgive us. Then I think that is all that we have for This Day newspaper.
All right, quickly moving on to the News Direct newspaper. Nigeria at 61. Keep praying for Nigeria or your state, says Makinde urges Nigerians. Page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct. Channels Television, UNWTO sign MOU on global tourism. Page 7 of the Nigerian News Direct. Ogun government seeks collaboration of estate surveyors. Orders to deliver 2,500 housing units. Page 3, you can continue reading the story on the page. Forex defaulters. Customers threaten banks over names publication. Page 2, that's the major headline on the front page of the paper. And we can see on the front page pictures of, the new ambassador extraordinary and, it's quite tiny. Well, of Japan to Nigeria. You have Matsunog left, and of course, Director General, CEO, Nigerian. Sorry about that, it's quite tiny. I just, it's right there on the front page of the paper. Forgive me. Dangote volunteers commence Sustainability Week initiatives. Page 3 as well of the Nigerian News Direct. Let's channel borrowed funds to regenerative areas of economy, says Fayemi, page 7 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. And that'll be all on the paper.
I have the Daily Sun. Expectations fails. As CBN rolls out e-Naira October 1st, you can read more on that story on page 25. And the rider under that says banks' non-performing loans plunged to 5.4%. The Sun award an additional push to serve better, says Governor Yahaya Bello. You can read more on that story on page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. PDP leaders in dilemma over choice of chairman. The rider under that says 6-party elders intervention meeting ended in deadlock. Why zoning committees? You can read more on that story on page 6. PIA Nigeria introduces 2% yearly increase on royalty. You can read more on that story on page 17. Inflation FX scarcity trigger 140 billion naira outflow from NGX in 8 months. You can read more on that story on page 24. Nigeria suffering from leadership failure, says Wike. More on that story on page 26. Published names of suspected looters of 6 trillion naira NDDC funds. Serap tells Buhari. You can read more on that story on page 26 and 27. And still on that page, the rider under that says another law group urges Buhari to inaugurate commission's board. APC mulls December for national convention. You can read more on that story on page 26. Experts fault federal government 12 trillion naira all subsidy claim. And the rider under that says cites inefficiency in downstream power sectors. More on that story on page 25. And at the very bottom of the page, NDLEA operatives raid Abuja hotel. Others seize 3,300 kilograms of drugs. You can read more on that story on page 4. And that is all we have on the Daily Sun newspaper.
Quickly moving on to the Nigerian pilot. Bandits attack joint military base in Sabon Barni. Number of casualties unknown. Page 5 of the paper. Catholic bishops asked federal government to tackle Nigeria's worrisome challenges now. Well, it's right on page 11. You might want to take a glance at that. And boldly written on the front page, published the looters. Serap gives Buhari 14 days ultimatum to publish names of those that looted over 6 trillion naira from NDDC. Urges federal government to direct anti-corruption agencies to bring to justice those responsible. Says steps would guarantee non-repetition, improve perception in fight against corruption. Threatens to take appropriate legal actions to compel federal government to comply with its request. All this you find on page 8 of the Nigerian pilot. Alright, still on the paper, justice necessary for peace in Nigeria, says Oshibajo, page 9 of the paper. APC government committed more to diversity economy than others. Sorry about that, it's quite. APC government committed more to diversity economy than others, says Lawan. Page 12 of the paper. No suspect of Boko Haram financiers released. AGF Malami. Pages 5 of the Nigerian pilot. PDP to APC. You have admitted wrecking the Naira. APC, PDP.
They are always fighting.
Well, we and Abigail said some time ago, it's not better we have just 2 ruling parties in Nigeria. Let's know.
Everybody else, you just sit down and watch.
And let's see how it plays out, right? Well, the story's right on page 11. Federal government creating room for more strikes, says NASU, SSAU, THRIA.
Do you think this is an
quite
abbreviation?
It's a long abbreviation. But the story's right on page 8. You might want to have a glance at it as well. Ohaneze to federal government. How do you compensate all unlawfully arrested Igbos? Pages 9 of the Nigerian pilot. And at the very bottom of the paper, Governor Fayemi says our tax system problematic and confusing. But the story is right on page 6. And that'll be all on the Nigerian pilot.
quickly on the daily asset before we call it a day. Innovation, Quality Service and Touch Bank Industry Award. You can read more on that story on page 2 of the daily asset newspaper. Osibanjo tax Christian leaders on religious freedom and rule of law. And the writer under that says Obasanjo, Okorocha, Dogara and others bag award. You can read more on that story in the newspaper. Nigeria will overcome her travails, says Lalong. We say an amen to that, and you can read more on that story on page 4. Kogi solicits support for education funding. You can read more on that story on page 5. Diri orders probe autopsy into Bayelsa youth death. You can read more on that story on page 4. NUJ condemns blocking of Mina entrance exit routes. You can read more on that story on page 8. And Gombe governor bags Dan Majay traditional title. You can read more on that story on something that looks like 20. Insecurity direct cause of poverty, says Zainab. You can read more on that story on page 2. At the bottom page, Benway's IDPs petition INEC over exclusion from CVR. You can read more on that story on page 24 of the Daily Asset newspaper.
All right, quickly moving on to the leadership newspaper. Sadiko bows out, leaves legacy of profits, transparency at NIPC. But the story is on the front page and you can continue reading it on page 4. Nigeria at 61. We can't build a nation with bigotry and nepotism, says northern governors. The story is on page 4. And right under it says, one against defining people based on religion and tribe. Say the marketing Nigeria comes with great consequences. Vision of united country undefeated, says Oshibajo. All this you find on page 4 of the leadership newspaper. Nigeria gets $86.64 million Islamic bank loan from Minabida Road. Page 6. Ganduje appoints Ibrahim Gaya as Emir of Gaya. Page 15 of the leadership newspaper. Pension asset investment in federal government securities eats 8.51 trillion naira. Page 33 of the paper. 10 more abducted Bethel Baptist students regain freedom. Page 6. 6 northern states economy under threat. Page 15 of the leadership newspaper. APC committed more resources to diversify economy than PDP, says Lawan. And that's all on the leadership newspaper. I wish we could take more, but because of our time, we won't be able to do that. Thank you very much for being a part of the newspaper review. It comes up every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. here on Lagoon Radio, your number one online gospel radio station, powered by the Diocese of Lagos, Anglican Communion. But you can like and follow us for more info on entertainment here 24/7. On Facebook is at Lagoon Radio Nigeria. On Instagram and Twitter is at Lagoonradio.Ng. You can also tell your family and friends to listen via our website on www.lagoonradio.ng. My name is Taiwo Adiola Shabilegbe. And thank you, Favor Onsachi, for being my co-host. And thanks to Okpeyemi and Sammy. Thank you very much. Have a good morning. And do not go anywhere. Coming right after now at 10 a.m. is the moment of truth with the Venerable Henry Adelekon. You don't want to miss it. It promised to be, promising to be.
Promising.
All right, thank you very much. Do not go anywhere. This is the Lagoon Radio.